So the other thing that I've been exploring is the whole idea of cynicism, and I think hypnotherapy is a really interesting one because I probably would see myself as someone who's not particularly susceptible or suggestible is the word used, isn't it? And that I always want this stuff to work, and I don't know whether I want it to work so much that I overthink it, but quite often, like, I went to see Darren Brown a couple of years ago, and I sat there really, really looking intently and completely ruined the final like part of the show because I'd kind of overthought it and figured I was like, there's that there, there's that there, that must mean something, and ruined it for myself. Although he did something last time, I could see him twice. Last time I saw him, it did work, and I was like, my God, it actually worked on me. But um so yes, I'm interested in what are other people. Do you ever find people being a bit cynical around what you do, or a bit kind of like, is that a bit woo woo? And how would you respond to a cynic?
So the interesting thing is the if someone's come to me, usually it's via a kind of a referral. So somebody's recommended it, um, and they may not know much about hypnotherapy, and they may be a little bit cynical, but they kind of trust the person that's given them the referral. Um, and I think that's where the the toolkit, because the cognitive hypnotherapy toolkit is quite big, that I can say there are many different ways we can do this. So that's one, and we can find something that you are comfortable with. One of our other kind of main principles is you work with the client's model of the world. So somebody who is quite woo, you can use more of the woo, so to speak.
Woo.
But if somebody is kind of very down to earth and scientific, then you use the psychoeducation, and you kind of can go, right, well, here's an article that you can read about how that part of the brain works, and here's something with research behind it around habit formation. Or so you kind of you pick your approach based on what's going to be more comfortable for them.
Yeah.
um and that, but then you do, and when they hit the woo, they're experiencing it directly. So you can't really explain to somebody what it's like to go to find that you have a feeling that you can put outside yourself, and you can see what color it is, and you can transform it and it changes. Um, so I did with one guy who he was uh, in kind of in his 30s or 40s and was learning to drive for the first time. And he was getting panic attacks. Joining the kind of the main dual carriageway around Cambridge is always a bit of a nightmare anyway. But there were roadworks, and they had these massive concrete blocks down the side that he was, and the combination of those two things just kind of was turning it into a massive panic attack situation for him. But he was a computer programmer, he was scientific, he didn't really want the work, but we just said, okay, we're just going to play with this and see what happens. And we did the put the feeling outside, and then you spin it, and in spinning it one way you kind of feel, oh no, that's getting worse, and then you spin it the other way, and you keep spinning it the other way. And there's this kind of weird thing that happens in the subconscious mind, that it transforms. So he had his visualization of the feeling was this concrete block, and then after a while it turned into fabric that was going around in a tumble dryer, so it became much softer. It softened and loosened, and so he was. And then you take back, okay, so now you've got a different feeling, and you bring that feeling back in. So now when you're driving down, you're not going to worry about the blocks, then you do the kind of the words around. You're just going to be aware of that you're joining, and you're going to be completely relaxed, and you're going to see where the traffic is, and the gaps will be there. And you certainly don't mention the concrete blocks. You want them to forget about those. But that when their subconscious mind is engaging and the woo happens, it's much easier then. If you try and tell somebody who's not had that experience that your subconscious mind will play this game because it loves it. They're like, no, 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 no. But once they're in the middle of it, it's like, oh, how the hell did that happen? You know? Yeah.
I'm smiling as you're talking because I nearly had hypnotherapy around driving. I've had five failed tests and
Uh,
passed, but I'm a very good driver.
mm,
So my last two tests, one of them, there's a notoriously tricky roundabout, not far from the test centre. So I'd done the first 35 minutes of the test. I then got to the roundabout and whatever happened, got back to the test centre and they said, I'm afraid to tell you that you failed. It was lane discipline on the B&Q roundabout. All right, fair enough. What else did I do wrong? Nothing. It was perfect. And then the next test, I nailed that roundabout. Got to a dual carriageway. So dual carriageway. I got to a road on the way back to the test centre with a couple of lanes, and there was a lorry to my left. I was like, I want to just gently speed up to accelerate and just overtake the lorry. So I was watching the lorry, watching the lorry, watching the lorry.
mm,
And
mm,
the examiner took the wheel.
mm,
And this was literally on the way back to the test centre. And again, I said to the examiner, I said, I know obviously I failed because you took the wheel. But what else to do wrong? He said, nothing. So both times they were perfect tests. And you know, when you just think, there's something going on here. There's some sort of self-sabotage that, and I don't know if this sounds a bit
interesting.
woo-woo.
Mm,
Like I felt like I needed something psychological to unpick why on some level I didn't want to pass my test.
mhm.
But I still haven't. I still haven't got that far yet. But
That's interesting. No, it's interesting when people kind of hypnotherapy instincts kick in and people say things and you're like, oh, and so yeah, that does sound like, and again, driving's really stressful, and the so I'll tell you a driving story about my son. He's 20 now, and he had done one of these accelerated driving courses because there was just such a massive waiting list for all the local driving instructors. So he did this kind of 1 week, 5 day course. And it is, you can't explain to somebody beforehand how stressful it's going to be. And he was just so wound up the whole process. He was not in a happy place. But he was good enough that his dad and I would take him out and he'd do his driving practice. And then he booked his test. And I think Neil was away, and I ended up having to take my son out for every day that week because he was coming up to his test. And he was so stressed. And his driving was a disaster all week. And I knew that his driving, his basic handling of the car, judgment at junctions was fine. But because he was stressed, it all went to pot. And I kind of endured that week, and I got him into to have his test, and I sat in a cafe, and he had several small things, but they passed him. He passed. He drove home perfectly. He was chatting. He was driving. It was all the anxiety. So that's one thing, and in particular the especially that they're happening at the end, which is when the concentration, you're concentrating so hard in a test and you're being judged and everything's being measured, and then but yes, those having those things happening towards the end, and you're just like and especially because if everything's perfect, that to do something that then is sufficiently a no that you don't pass. What So here's the questions then. What do you gain if you've passed your test?
I would have freedom, I would have convenience, I would have more time. Um, I think I would feel like a proper grown up. I think there's something in there about um it's something that grown-ups do.
Yeah.
Uh and just real practical things like being able to just go, I wouldn't be reliant on people in the way that I am now. So I'd be able to so my parents live in Liverpool, so I could just shove everything in the back of the car, pack whatever I wanted and drive down and see them whenever I wanted, rather than kind of having to get on the train and only pack, stuff that would I could put on the back of the buggy, and I would have life would be easier. It's almost like
Hmm.
I want my life to be easy.
Yeah. And what if you pass your test, what do you lose?
Um, the word that came up was excuse.
Okay.
I'm not sure, like I'm not sure exactly what I mean by that, but almost like um I wouldn't be able to say, oh, I can't because I can't drive, or oh, I can't because I haven't got a car.
So there are some things that it gives you an excuse that you can wiggle out of some things more easily because the car's the excuse.
Or
Anything
even
else?
if it's something like I I become more independent, and that's not always a good thing.
So there are a couple of, so that's interesting, more independent. And then there was the word reliant. So who helps you? Who are you depending on?
So I've got a couple of friends and my parents.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that I'm hearing in here is, so the I don't want my life to be easy. I think that's your rational mind trying to find yeah, there's got to be some reason for this weird thing happening. So that feels like a rational mind thought. But the proper grown up
Mm.
was an interesting phrase. Excuse, I think there is, that's interesting. Reliance, um, independence. So I think that there's a little subtle something going on there where this is like a step into being more independent, more grown up. And whilst that feels like it might be freedom and convenience, there's a responsibility around that that you might be a little bit, I don't know, that's like, do I really want to be a grown up? And I'm mid 50s and I still say when I grow up I want to. So we never quite feel like a grown up.
No, I remember working with someone years ago who had really bad COPD and smoked a hell of a lot. And I remember her saying to me one time, I know I could give up smoking, but I won't. Because if I could give up smoking, then I know I could do anything.
And there's a lot around that if we, the fear is almost not the fear of doing it, but the fear of facing what you've never taken the control to do.
That's the fear of our own power.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I've been talking a lot with different people about things like manifestation and wealth and um, being able to be ambitious and say, I want to be rich, or I want to be wealthier than I want to be abundant, whatever words you want to use. And often that's what comes up. It's that kind of what if we are all capable of so much more than we ever think possible
Mm. Yeah,
ourselves?
yeah. That we kind of create these very small goals for ourselves, thinking that, that's going to be such a hard work to achieve that. And then, but actually, what if 10 times goal is just as achievable as the tiny little goal that we want to set ourselves? Yeah.
Well, you know, what if this interview is the one that goes viral?
Mm.
I do. Why not?
Yeah.
There's so many things that could happen if we let it.
Yeah. I think there's two sides to that, the manifestation thing and the kind of the power of what we could dream. And there's ourselves and what we do, which we have complete control over. Doesn't always feel like it, but we have complete control over. And then there's how that goes out into the world and what happens. And we don't have control over that. And what that gives us the feedback. And so this is, I think, where the tension can come, is doing our dream in our way and not worrying too much about the feedback, because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it's just got me thinking about it's one of these things where I have a story in my head, but I can't remember any of the details. So how useful it's going to be. There was an American guy who wrote songs, performed songs. He had a couple of albums in the 70s. And he was kind of a bit Bob Dylan-y.
Okay.
And he never took off in the US, possibly because he had either Mexican or Native American blood in. So he kind of didn't fit the kind of stereotypes of the day. But he did these albums, and then his life moved on. They didn't get anywhere. But years later, he found out that they'd kind of become an entire cultural icon in South America. No,
Oh,
sorry, in South Africa, get it right. So in South Africa during apartheid, they were like anthems for the youth to kind of cope with this situation and find other ways of thinking about things.
amazing.
And but there was like a mythos around, because no one knew who he was, because they didn't have the internet then, and no one knew where. So there were stories about what had happened to him, and this one particular guy became fascinated and tracked him down. And there's a film about it.
This rings a bell. This rings a
Yeah,
bell.
Sugar Man. That was one of his songs. I can't remember if that was the name of the film, but I watched that, and it was this really beautiful illustration of all we can do is what is in us to do to the best of our ability, because we love doing it. If you hate doing it, don't do it. But you've got to find some joy in doing it for yourself, because that might be all that ever happens. It might disappear into oblivion. But what you don't know is, as things go out into the world, what that's doing for someone. And you may never, ever, ever know what that's doing for someone. And we kind of we want the feedback, we want the viral, we want the this, we want that, but actually what we want to do is connect in, let it go out, be happy doing it, and then the universe will take that and weave it into the fabric, and it will have an effect. And 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 sometimes what comes back might be nothing to do with what you've done, but it will give you what you need when you need it.
So, any final thoughts? Anything that you'd like to share with the viewers?
When I was struggling, it was really difficult to know that there were people out there that would help me. I didn't think to look for therapy. It seemed like even too silly a thing to need therapy over, and therapy seemed like a big thing that. There are a lot of people out there who have been through stuff, have found tools that really, really help them, and now want to help other people. And I would say you don't have to struggle alone. And so, whether it's if you look for counseling or therapy or hypnotherapy, if you think that it's something that's not even worth it, throw that thought away, because sitting down to talk with someone who really just wants to listen and help is a very, very powerful thing. And if you find somebody and they can't help you, they will probably be plugged in or be able to give you that guidance of what might help. So it's always worth, if there's something you're struggling with, if there's something you go, I wish this was different. I wish this didn't keep happening to me. I wish I didn't lose my temper. I wish I wasn't afraid of golf balls. I wish, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it around. There are many, many tools out there. And the first step is going, I don't really know how to do this on my own. I need help. And then just try something. You'll be amazed at the results.
Brilliant. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.